According to psychology, some people constantly create elaborate scenarios in their minds. It might happen while they're listening to a sad song. It might happen when they're lying in bed before falling asleep, or simply while staring out the window, sitting quietly, even though an entire story is unfolding inside their mind. They imagine saying the words they never had the chance to say. They imagine the perfect reunion. They replay an argument where, this time, they finally come out on top. They imagine someone understanding them, loving them, apologizing to them, or finally recognizing their worth. This experience is often referred to as maladaptive daydreaming. It's much more than a few passing thoughts. It's as if the mind creates an entirely different world, one that feels more vivid, safer, easier to control, and sometimes even more comforting than reality itself. In that world, you become a stronger version of yourself. You finally say everything you've been holding back. You're loved the way you've always wanted to be loved. You rewrite painful memories, difficult conversations, and emotional wounds that real life never gave you the chance to heal. What many people don't realize is that this is often a coping mechanism. When real life feels overwhelming, lonely, or impossible to control, the brain searches for a place to escape, and that place is imagination. For example, someone may listen to the same song over and over while imagining they're the main character in a movie. The music becomes the soundtrack. Their emotions become more intense. Slowly, an entire world begins to form. A setting, characters, relationships, and eventually a perfect ending. In that world, they're understood. They're never abandoned. They no longer feel powerless, and finally, they feel seen. The problem is that this sense of comfort usually lasts only as long as the fantasy itself. When the music stops, when reality returns, the room is still the same. The loneliness is still there. The sadness hasn't disappeared. And the problems waiting outside that imaginary world remain unresolved. From a neuroscience perspective, imagination activates brain networks involved in memory, self-reflection, emotion, and internally focused thinking. It can also trigger the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and creating a temporary feeling of satisfaction, almost as if something meaningful had actually happened. That's why many people daydream more when they're feeling sad. The lonelier they feel, the more they imagine. The more emotionally wounded they become, the more they retreat into stories that exist only in their minds. Because in imagination, everything can unfold exactly the way they want it to. In real life, they may never find the courage to speak, but in their mind, they know exactly what to say. In real life, the other person may never apologize, but in their imagination, that person comes back, admits they were wrong, and finally recognizes their value. In real life, they may feel like they've failed, but inside their mind, they're the hero. And that's exactly what makes maladaptive daydreaming so addictive. It isn't laziness, it isn't weakness, it's simply the nervous system trying to soothe emotional pain the only way it knows how. Sometimes the roots of this habit can be traced back to chronic loneliness, sometimes emotional neglect, and sometimes painful childhood experiences when a child had no one who truly listened, protected them, or made them feel safe. When reality feels too frightening or too empty, the mind builds a second world, a world where they're loved, a world they can control, a world where they no longer have to feel hurt. As they grow older, that imaginary world doesn't always disappear. Instead, they may return to it whenever they're stressed, whenever they experience heartbreak, whenever they feel like they're not enough. Each time they create another story where they finally feel valued. At first, this escape may bring temporary relief, but over time, it can slowly pull them away from real life. They may spend hours imagining, yet struggle to take action. They may experience deep emotions inside their mind while becoming increasingly quiet in the real world. They may have hundreds of imaginary conversations while avoiding the real conversations that truly matter. This is the point where daydreaming stops being a refuge. It quietly becomes a cage. Not a cage that hurts you immediately, but one that slowly keeps you from moving forward. Because the more you escape into your imagination, the less you engage with reality. And the more you become attached to perfect endings in your mind, the harder it becomes to accept the beautifully imperfect nature of real life. True peace doesn't come from creating the perfect story inside your head. True peace comes from gradually building a life you no longer feel the need to escape from. That doesn't mean you have to stop imagining altogether. Imagination isn't the enemy. Music isn't the enemy. Daydreaming itself isn't the enemy. But it's worth asking yourself one simple question. Am I imagining to create, or am I imagining to escape? If you're simply using your imagination to relax for a while, that's perfectly normal. But if you realize you're spending more time living in imaginary stories than in your real life, it may be time to gently reconnect with the life that's waiting for you. Start with something small. Write down how you're feeling. Talk to someone you trust. Clean your room. Go for a short walk. Do one small thing that the version of yourself in those fantasies would be proud of. Because you don't have to disappear from reality in order to heal. You deserve a real life where you're genuinely loved, truly heard, and deeply at peace. The stories inside your mind may have perfect endings, but the most important story you'll ever write is the one you're living right now. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to like, follow, and share it with your 3 closest friends.